Hi everyone and welcome to Techweek TV, brought to you by Callaghan Innovation. So excited to have you joining us this afternoon. Today in this session we are going to be exploring how we can mitigate the issue of the digital equality for the youth of Aotearoa. It is estimated there are around 35,000 households with up to 100,000 school-aged children without access to suitable internet. To a suitable internet connection. Limited access to vital technology means many children are deprived of equal opportunity to learn. This panel discussion addresses these issues and explores an approach to building a bridge to overcome the digital divide. Joining the discussion is with us is Chorus, Network for Learning and the Ministry of Education. We have Kurt Rogers, Network Strategy Manager at Chorus, Anne Bentley, Manager of the Equitable Digital Access for Students Initiative for the Ministry of Education. That's a mouthful, but good. And Clayton Hubbard, Senior Solutions Architect at Network for Learning. Thank you so much for being here today. I did want to give that background at the start just so that kind of people understand how big the problem is you're trying to solve, and so they've got some context there. So I guess where I want to kick off is you're each coming at this from a different place. So maybe we can start with you, Anne, and you can tell us, where you're coming at this from.
Well, you kind of explained it just now. We've got 100,000 odd kids who don't have internet at home. Mm-hmm. We know that internet at home is a key part of actually leveraging it fully in the classroom, and so unless we can bring up those kiddies to be able to use the internet at home, it holds back both their outcomes and the peer group that they happen to be part of, their learning cohorts, because no teacher can fully utilise digital in the classroom if they haven't got all the kids able to use it back at home. So there you go, that's our position.
From a Ministry of Education standpoint, are you sort of in charge of making sure that, of the entire project?
Yes.
Yeah, cool, okay.
Yeah, so at Chorus we're really aware that everybody needs access to the digital world. I mean, this is just critical going forward that everyone can participate in the digital economy. And I guess we're building a great fibre asset, and so we think it's appropriate to try and make that available to everyone that we can as possible, to ensure everyone gets the opportunity to engage.
I just actually moved to Waiheke Island and got my fibre installed.
How was that?
Amazing. I've had it twice now.
Excellent, yes. Almost everybody says that.
But the thing that is funny is my Auckland friends kind of thought that I wouldn't be as well connected, and that because I live on an island, away from the big island. Yeah,
so I think, just to follow up on that, I think the issue of coverage, that is good broadband being available in geography areas, has actually been solved.
Yep.
So it's not really an issue anymore about there being the infrastructure there. The real issue is, I guess, people's affordability and people's ability to actually be able to get it. And that's really where the issue is. It's no longer about building new assets, it's more about how we enable people to connect to it.
Yeah, to leverage them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and from Network for Learning, so our background is we provide all the safe, secure, reliable, fast internet to all the schools in New Zealand at the moment. So as part of that service, it's really thinking of how we take that safety and essentially extend it out of the school grounds into the the student's home or the location which they're trying to learn from. So it's trying to give that equal opportunity for them to continue to use it.
Okay, and we're going to go back to you. So what exactly is equitable digital access?
Well, the equity aspect of it is to try and address that, to make sure that all students have the tools and the capabilities that they need to succeed. So that's what we talk about, which is what the equity piece as opposed to equal is. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that we get all of the enabling conditions in place for full digital access for our student community. So we're talking about inputs sort of thing and targeting the input investment.
And for those watching at home that might not understand the world that you guys are living in, what does this mean exactly? So you've got an internet connection in the home. Do they have devices?
So
what's the play-by-play?
Well, so they've got the fibre going down the street, like Kurt was just saying, and so a lot of families don't have the finances perhaps to engage with the market. They don't have the confidence to, the more they stay disconnected from the internet, the less able they feel they can do it. So we need to get in there and try and bridge that divide, try and encourage both the adults in the family to buy into this, to enable the kids to take advantage of the connections. And so we have to address the financial aspect and that, as I say, that confidence piece. And yes, they may have devices. A lot of them will have phones, but phones aren't a suitable learning device. So, and neither is a mobile plan suitable for learning. So hence we need to move into a fit for purpose educational solution.
It's not the fibre that's the problem. What's the problem is that they then have to interface with like the stuff fibre or these like the Vodafones and the telecoms of the world to get their internet connection.
And it can be for some it's a financial barrier as well as just a sort of psychological one. They think they're connected because they can do Facebook on the phone kind of thing. And if you're buying an $80 a month kind of fibre product, well, that's just out of the reach of many of the people we'd be trying to support.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
So I mean, just to add on to what Anne is saying, I mean, the opportunity that this actually gives people, this online digital kind of world out there, there's so many benefits and opportunities yet to be explored, and to be found and taken advantage of. And I mean, essentially having them not been able to take advantage of that opportunity definitely does kind of create that divide. But just, that whole, what we refer to almost as that skills, that motivation, that trust to actually use it. It's quite minimal. It's quite a scary place for a lot of people at the moment. And, over time, yes, we will hopefully bridge that. But yeah, it is a scary time.
It's quite interesting where there's the infrastructure and technology component, but really one of the biggest ones is the education, right? So how do you move on from maybe just being connected to social media, but then actually using the internet for good and learning?
Yeah, for learning and for job prospects, engagement with government, all of those things. That is the wider divide challenge. That's right. Yeah. And in fact, sorry.
No, I was just going to actually say a great example of that is actually. We had a kid at one of our trials and they were really, really into wanting to make their own radio station. And they were going to school, they didn't have internet at home, they were sitting at late hours to the school, walking home in the dark, and that causes a whole bunch of other issues. But the ability for that person now to be able to do that from home and continue to foster that passion that they got, that's a true example to that.
So I know that you have you're working on some projects at the moment, so maybe if we could have an overview of what some of those are.
Yeah, so a couple of the ones that we're involved in is in Christchurch at Hayata Community Campus, but also in Wellington at Rata Street School in Nainai. Now both of those schools are, I think, both decile 1, and what we know from the wider market is broadband uptake or broadband penetration is at about 85% of homes have broadband, but in these low decile areas, in the low decile schools, it's at about 50%. So there's a lot of kids at those schools who, when they leave the school gate, they go home and don't have access to the internet. So their sort of learning stops at the school gate. So what we've done in both of those places is we've really extended the school's Wi-Fi network into those kids' homes. And then their school device, which works at school through the Network for Learning web filter, safe, secure access, is available just to that child's device at home. So it's really extending their the ability to learn beyond the 9 till 3, and so that they can learn after hours in their home.
It also seems like you're taking responsibility for the education component of like what is being safe on the internet as well.
The solution does, but that's the filter that sits with the Network for Learning.
So essentially, there's age-appropriate filters that are in place. So depending on where that student is in the year group, they will get the right access kind of for them and have some boundaries set up. And essentially, it is creating that little safe sand pits. Go and have a bit of a play, explore around in this world, but the boundaries in those that's in place. And just in case if they do come and stumble across the wrong thing, that at least you can kind of go, hey, steer it onto the right path
Yeah, that's true. There's an aspect of cyber safety and cyber security as well as actually just general education that you gain from using the internet.
100%.
Both of which we cover.
I mean, I personally find it quite interesting because I've got 3 kids at school, and so they experience that the Network for Learning, web filtered service at school. So I can trust that when my child is at the school, their device and their Wi-Fi access is safe. They can't go to the TAB, they can't do naughty things, and that's great. But of course, when they come home, that becomes my responsibility. So I think this is quite interesting here to actually extend that safe and secure access for the child into people's homes. So you've got some sort of consistency of safety and security is quite good.
And that is the vision, isn't it, in the pilots, is the same experience at home. In fact, anytime, anywhere is ultimately the goal, but at home. That you get when you're in the school.
Because it's always a stress for parents about what their kids are doing online. So I think the schools have got it cracked, because schools are pretty good with the web filtering to give a safe learning environment.
But as Kurt mentioned, what I would like to add there is, in order to get those pilots actually going, so the pilots that we're running, trying out different types of technologies and stuff across them, but it's actually the engagement with the community side of things. So we've had a number of trusts and communities and stuff that have to all get behind. The school's got to get behind it. There's devices. There's a whole raft of array of things that they need to do. And actually, the connectivity part is, I guess, actually
pretty simple.
The simple part.
That's right.
It's the on/off. It's the hammer. It's the hammer in the toolbox. But if you don't know how to use the hammer, then it's just a hammer. And I think that's the challenge.
Yeah, that's right. That's where a lot of the investment goes. Absolutely.
And I think it's been the focus of those pilots, hasn't it? And trying to build up and create those frameworks almost.
It is. It's that local connection. It's that building people's confidence and engagement, both with the school, because the school's the delivery vehicle, and also the and confidence in technology.
Are you seeing any increase in equality because of the access that you're providing, or is it too early to tell?
Well, certainly. I mean, they're very interestingly, actually, the data that we've got out from the Network for Learning in terms of the usage shows that the new adopters to the network haven't quite ramped up to the same level of consumption as like we all experience, and I think it's indicative of them trying to catch up. Like they've had a mindset of being constrained with mobile plans, and now this is actually a bit of it's go for gold. It's limitless. It's uncapped data, and they just haven't quite changed their patterns of usage yet.
And it's a motivation thing, isn't it? Because one of the trials that we ran in, I remember as they started off, they did this great YouTube type of run, and these kids had to basically, they got the internet at home, they got their device, they took their Chromebook home, they connected up, and they were given a challenge to make a little video. So they went heavy onto YouTube and did all these things and learned this little dance, and then they were going to go kind of perform this little dance. When they first connected, we just saw this massive ramp, and and if you do not keep those little programs going of how they actually use it, especially when they're learning and they're coming from a place where they don't normally have it every single day, there is a bit of encouragement required,
but it will happen.
And I think it's going to be quite transformational because, as Anne said, the kids who are getting this in the trials just haven't had that experience before at home. So it's quite a revolutionary, I think, for them. So I think and what we know about the internet is once you start using it, you never go back. So I think there's only one way this is going to go.
Well, sometimes you do, but we're not going to get into that here. Okay, so is there anything else that we want to talk about in terms of the importance of the equality of access, or do you think we've well covered that here?
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, we could elaborate more that, the teaching techniques, that, that's the way education is going. It's about collaboration, social inclusion, all of those things I think that extrapolate just out of education and across the digital divide, whatever. But for sure, it certainly does limit the ability of teachers to leverage digital techniques and opportunities unless we can close this gap. So.
And from a bit of a techie solution bit is, of course, we wanted to make sure we didn't put any constraints on this. Or I guess the only constraint is it is limited to the child's device. So we don't want any other family members or other devices, using this. It's just, that's the only constraint. So no, really, really fast speeds, no data plan, no cost to that child. So we wouldn't want to put any artificial constraints in, because as soon as you start putting in artificial constraints, you just disincent people to actually use it. So for us, that was a really important feature here, was to make, just big fat pipe. They can use as much as they want, as long as it's for education purposes, it's all good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, what's the response been from the people who have benefited from the trials? Have you had any kids just have like amazing breakthroughs beyond your example?
There's various anecdotes, and from parents as well, actually, who've really enjoyed being able to engage with their kids' education, both with the kiddie doing schoolwork, or the joys of mathletics or whatever at home. They can sit with them, they can work with them. They get feedback from the school through different sort of apps that the different schools have chosen to use to communicate. And I think there's another anecdote from Rata Street, I think, where one of the dads was just really excited about his kid could engage with more cultural stuff, like the Kappa Haka group, and connect with family overseas and that kind of thing. So, that basically it's inevitably only positive. The other aspect I think that's been really good, apart from just the connection, is within the scope of what our pilots cover is the provision of devices, and that can be another barrier to entry, because it's a fairly considerable cost. So each of the pilots have to have some kind of purchase option, or in the case of Rata Street, school gives the devices out. But that's been a great success, actually. That's really, just people have been really excited about, they're willing to try and get involved. They just need these barriers removed. So I think that's another.
And the other anecdote that I've heard is also about the parents who often haven't had a big experience of being online and digital themselves. So having the child really being the first member of their family that is becoming digitally literate and actually starting to teach the parents and getting the parents enthused and engaging with the digital world as well. So I think it's a really good initiative in all those ways.
It's a phenomenal bonding opportunity as well in a family.
Yeah, it is.
And we hear that a lot from schools. So we've got client managers, essentially relationship managers that go all around the country, speaking to schools, and they speak about these barriers all the time. And I think that whole, almost those teaching practices, flipped classrooms type of things happening, right, where they can actually give a child or a student, hey, go read this at home, prepare, and we'll discuss inside the classroom, all those side of things.
But now opened up.
And that was the kind of comments that we started hearing from schools. And there's a number of schools in our case that have also gone out and done their own initiatives, right? They're already doing this themselves. And it's the same comments that kind of come back all the time. And that engaging with parents has been a problem for a very long time. I think it still is an issue. But I don't know about most people watching. I get all my notifications via an app of what's happening at my daughter's school. That's not available. That's not available for a lot of these parents, is it?
No, that's right.
How many schools is this in at the moment?
It's just rolling out to its third at the moment,
cool.
And that third one may well extend into some other ones in the trust in the area. And we're just exploring ways of trialling different technologies and then going on to work across government, because the same communities we're trying to reach, so are our other government partners. So picking up more schools next year.
Awesome. So there are plans to roll it out.
Yeah.
Take it further, absolutely.
Awesome, that's exciting.
And I think, just to say, one of the ironies is just the other day I did another Techweek event around the senior net community, because I think part of the digital divide happens at both ends of the age spectrum. It's really important for the senior community to reduce barriers to the senior community to come on board, but also to the other end of the community. So it's quite interesting for me personally this week to be dealing with issues that my children have, and also issues that my mum has.
My mum texted me before after watching a session, and she was like, "I want to change the world." I was like, "That's awesome." She's like, "I'm tuning in from work." I'm like, "Woohoo, go you, Mum." Okay, so last question that we have time for is eliminating the divide as the end goal, and so we can be, have equity and be equal. Where to from here, and what might everyday New Zealanders or other businesses be able to do to support you in achieving this goal sooner and faster?
Well, I'll just start, because I think it's really important that everyone in New Zealand is able to connect to the digital world, and it's almost like until everyone is able to, it actually makes it a bit difficult, particularly for delivery of government services, but also for a lot of businesses, who do want to engage with their customers in the community digitally. If we've always got this digital divide, it's just going to create ongoing problems. And so there's so much more opportunity to be had to actually make sure everyone's able to connect, because then everyone is able to streamline all the service delivery across public and private sector, to ensure that no one's missing out. So I think it's more work's needed, I think.
Absolutely.
I would say the partnership model, I think, people who play in the space, especially across, if you think from a devices to kind of that skills training side of things, all the way through to technology partners, I think all of them can play their piece, and essentially help us close this across, so we've had some really good support from, the likes of your Ruckuses, your 40net, all these companies that help us build the infrastructure. They've been great.
Yeah, and we are looking at sort of, when you say other parts of industry or whatever, trying to contribute to the solution. We would like to do a partnering model to manage this at scale, because I don't know that government is going to pick up the cost of the entire thing. So we need to work out ways of.
No one player can do everything.
No. And there's many gainers. So we want to try and spread the.
I was wondering about that, because obviously things cost money, right? So if you've got an open pipe for a child, but there's 100,000 of them, how do we manage that as a country?
Well, we have had a bit of a think actually about a sort of ubiquitously university available product for students that is then levied, and the levy comes back and funds for the other 100,000. So we're kind of trying to think creatively about how to draw in other mechanisms of funding, because as you say, it's quite an expensive solution.
Yeah. But a worthy one at that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do we have any final thoughts before we wrap up? No?
No, that's it.
Thank you so much for the work you're doing. It's a really important problem that we do need to solve, and thanks for joining us today. For those of you at home, I think if you have any family members or any kids in the family, make sure that they know how to use the internet and their devices. I think that's one contribution you can make as a New Zealander to contribute. And thanks for tuning in to Techweek TV, and we'll see you a bit later. Have a good day.